Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the 16th session of Discovering Islam. We discuss two topics in these sessions. One is regarding an important subject relevant to our understanding and practice of Islam, and the other is the reading of the Quranic text. I will begin with the discussion on belief in God first, and then we'll move on to discussing the Quranic text and its understanding in the second half. This is the third part of discussion on belief in God. And I've already talked about 8 points out of the 10 that I had to discuss regarding belief in God. I talked about the fact that God is an English expression for Allah, which is the Arabic expression for our creator, our sustainer. And therefore, there should be no hesitation, discussion on whether we should use God or not as an expression for our creator. The second thing I talked about was that when we are talking about belief in God, we're actually talking about the fact that we understand Him properly and we are convinced that He's there. And in order for us to understand God, we ought to know and learn what exactly are the different sources of learning that enable us to reach conclusion, whether a certain claim is true or not, whether a certain reality exists or not. And I mentioned that essentially there are three sources of learning. The first source is the source of intuition. And I mentioned that we know God intuitively. The second source is the source of sense perception, which includes the sense perception, the understanding that we get through seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, and tasting something. It could be a perception, an experience of ours, or it could be an experience of people belonging to the earlier generations. And I mentioned the fact that we do have credible information that God was experienced by people who are known to be our ancestors, Adam and Eve. Then I discussed the fact that God is to also be understood intellectually. And in order for the intellectual appreciation of God, the Quran does tell us that if we use both our intuition and our sense perception properly, wisely, intelligently, we will be able to come to the understanding of God, because we will not be able to deny the reality of discipline in this world, the fact that we are being provided for our needs in this world, the fact that we are getting immense advantage, blessings in this world without deserving them, and the fact that this world that we are a part of has been designed wisely. They all point to the fact that this life has to be explained, and it can only be explained by the proper understanding of God, the Creator, the Sustainer, who has all the great attributes. Otherwise, we will be always puzzled by the question as to how do we exist and how is the life that we are a part of functioning. Uh, I mentioned the fact that it's not possible for us to see God. It's not possible either for us to be able to imagine God, imagine uh, something that is similar to God, to be able to have an idea of how good, how God appears, how does He look like. Uh, the Quran tells us that that is not possible for us, but it does tell us that we do have a very good reason to be able to get in touch with God, to be able to come close to Him, uh, to feel His presence. But that is possible if we are able to understand His attributes. The attributes of God are the ones that the Quran describes in detail, and their manifestation is what we can see in this life. The more we try to understand, the more we imagine, we look at the presence of those attributes in our life, the more we try to be in touch with the Almighty through the appreciation of those attributes, the more we will feel the presence of God, not physical presence, but the real uh, spiritual, intellectual presence, which is going to continue to enable us to endeavor to come closer and closer to God. That is what the Quran keeps telling us and encourages us to employ as means of understanding God and coming close to Him. Uh, I also mentioned the fact that if there is a if there is a phenomenon which needs to be explained, like our existence, our life, and there are alternatives to it, uh, then probably one might say that uh, no one alternative is certain in claiming that that's the only alternative. However, if a phenomenon can be explained only through one explanation, there aren't any other alternatives, then it will have to be acknowledged that the explanation that is being offered, that has no other competitor, no other understanding to challenge, then uh, it will have to be accepted that that's the only explanation, that there is no other explanation. And that is true about God. Because if you look at the alternatives, it's either in the form of polytheism, that God is there, but He also has partners, He also has assistants uh, who have been given a role in uh, creating and running the affairs of this world. Uh, it's more of a partnership in roles that has been believed in, and not as much as in creating this world. The polytheists of Makkah, uh, they they felt that the one who has created this world is only the one God, Allah. But they somehow had this understanding that He has shared some of His powers with others. The Quran says that this claim has neither any intellectual reasoning behind it, nor there is any textual uh, support. That is, there is no scriptural mention from God declaring that He has Himself delegated some of His powers to others. So, polytheism, even though has been practiced in this world by a large number of people, and it still is being taken as um, a way of understanding our life. It really is a degenerated form of monotheism, belief in one God. The other, the other alternative I mentioned was the concept, the understanding of atheism, that there is no God. And I mentioned the fact that this particular understanding is uh, either the understanding that was something that only few people uh, took as an alternative to understanding God in the past. Um, it was uh, it was an understanding based on the concept, which is philosophical uh, understanding, appreciation called agnosticism, which in turn means that people, thinkers, philosophers felt that uh, it is not possible to find out whether this existence had a first cause and what cause was it, what was the beginning, or who caused it to happen. So it really is no explanation. Likewise, the understanding that the modern world is getting more and more appreciative of is the understanding of atheism based on the Big Bang theory and the theory of evolution. I explained my understanding that the fact of the matter is that uh, this understanding or this explanation of the reality of our life is only talking about how it all came about. So it is as if the question of God has got to do with the question of how everything happens, how this world came to be created, etc. Uh, the fact of the matter is that the more important question is who? Who created this world? Why did he create it? And when you look at the understanding of the atheists regarding who or why, uh, you would hardly find anything that is convincing or is put across authoritatively, confidently. Uh, the fact of the matter is that religion and Islam, the Quran in particular, very strongly mentions the fact that it is God who created this world. Okay, even if it was done uh, at the beginning by something which science describes as a Big Bang, well, that doesn't really mean that it, as a consequence of this explanation, is ruling out God. God is the one who caused this world to be created, and He's the one who is causing it to be sustained. If it is evolving, and it seems from the Quran that it indeed is evolving, that too is caused by God. So, after talking about the alternative, then now I'm going to turn to this question: why is it that there are people, many people, intelligent people, who don't believe? I mean, if what I'm claiming is correct, and the presentation of religion and in general and Islam in particular makes a lot of sense, that this world has been created by one God who has all the great attributes, and all those attributes are functioning simultaneously. Um, why was this concept not accepted by what we might call the intelligentsia of this world? Um, for one thing, my response is that um, it's not necessary that the intelligentsia all over the world, they have come to the conclusion that they are atheists. That's a bit of an exaggeration. But even if it is accepted as something which is fairly representative of most of the wise people of this world, uh, the fact is that this has come about because of their reaction to religion. It was the poor presentation of religion that has caused many modern day people to not believe in in religion, and obviously the basis of religion is God. So that's what really has happened. And when I say that the presentation of religion has been very unimpressive, I'm talking about both the concepts as well as the practices. There are two main world religions which have a very large following in the modern times. One of them is Christianity, and the other is Islam. So let's briefly take the case of Christianity. You see, our world is primarily, we like it or not, ruled by the West. And when we say the West, we're talking about first Europe, Western Europe, and now we're talking about America. Uh, America, United States of America, is a modern country, but prior to this country emerging and becoming a superpower, it was Europe primarily where the modern day progress in sciences, social sciences, in philosophies took place. But it's relatively a recent phenomenon. Prior to the, call it, scientific revolution, industrial revolution, Renaissance, etc., uh, Europe was dominated by two influences, two forces, powers. It was either, on the one hand, uh, the monarchs, the kings, or it was the church. Uh, it was a it was an alliance between these two important uh, sources of power that were controlling the affairs of Europe. Uh, and what happened was that because of the peculiar way of understanding religion that emerged amongst the Christians, particularly in the church, the leaders of Christians, uh, they had views which they wanted to impose on people. Um, there were philosophers, intellectuals, scientists who were emerging in a pretty impressive number. Uh, but because the environment was restrictive, it did not encourage people uh, to think, to reflect, to be critical, to question, to explore uh, the history of Europe at the time when church was dominant along with the monarchs uh, is not very impressive when it comes to the question of thinking uh, in an open, liberal way. Uh, there were restrictions imposed, and And as a result, as I said, critical thinking was discouraged, snubbed. A case in point is that of a famous astronomer, physicist, uh, Galileo. He came up with a view based on his investigation, which was not acceptable to the church because they had adopted an understanding of the world which they found was threatened by the new idea that Galileo was proposing. Because of their influence on the society, the church was able to therefore uh, forcibly silence Galileo, and he was declared to be a heretic. His views were heretical, and he was forced to recant his views, and he led the last years of his life uh, house arrest. So, what happened was that because of the kind of experiences people, intelligent people, philosophers, intellectuals, scientists had for centuries in Europe, when the dominance of church and the kings gave way to the modern era of democracy, of liberalism, of scientific revolution, etc., uh, religion was rejected. It was not allowed to play the kind of dominant role it played earlier on when the church was supreme as far as influence on the society was concerned. Um, the end result was that it was not just the church that was uh, rejected, not just Christianity that was rejected, uh, God too was rejected by many people. So, what I'm trying to say is that the understanding of God is presented in a confident way by religion. And I've talked about one of the two major religions of the world, which enjoy uh, more support and following than all other religions, by far the most uh, popular religion, Christianity. Uh, you know, the way it was presented and, its history uh, caused it to uh, not be looked at when with any degree of appreciation and sympathy by the modern man. The other important claim to be the religion of the religious people of the world is Islam. Um, Islam also has a history of dominance, a history of progress, a history of scientific investigation, uh, openness, dialogue, critical thinking. But then there came a time, let's say after 1,000 years of this golden period of Islam. Obviously, I'm not saying that there weren't any problems during this period. There were lots of problems as well. But by and large, uh, Islam uh, played a very positive role in enabling knowledge to be promoted amongst humans. But then it was influenced by three trends which we still see are influencing uh, Islam and Muslims. One of the trends is the trend of blind acquiescence, taqleed. A large number of Muslims have a very strong inclination that in order for them to be good Muslims, uh, they need to blindly follow their elders. And obviously, when you do it, the end result is that you're preventing your intellect to think, to reflect, to understand, and as a result, accept and believe in uh, the different beliefs that are presented intellectually. Uh, when you're following your religion blindly, then you're actually admitting that we do not have anything um convincing to offer. What we are asking from our followers is that they should just accept what has been given to them as true. Obviously, this approach cannot be accepted by any intelligent person. Uh, but along with taqleed, blind acquiescence, there came uh, another trend, which had to be a result of the, the policy of blind following. And that trend was the trend of extremism. Instead of following a path that was reasonable, that was uh, possible to be adopted, practical, uh, extreme views, both in the area of concepts, views, beliefs, as well as in the area of practices, were adopted, with the result that the picture of Islam, which the outside world was given to view, was anything but impressive. That was the second problem. But alongside the problem of taqleed, blind acquiescence, and extremism, there was a third problem, probably the most significant problem, damaging, destructive problem of terrorism, which not all, but many Muslims promoted as justifiable uh, by the teachings of Islam. There are people who are known to be terrorists, and they are Muslims. They present Quranic verses. They present the statements of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to justify what they're doing. Now, with that kind of a presentation, Islam, which we believe is the last of the messages of the Almighty, uh, and therefore we believe is the real hope for humanity to be able to come to learn about God. It was not it was not accessible, approachable to a large number of intelligent people. Um, and the end result was that people uh, were not interested in religion. The tragedy was that when they rejected religion, they also rejected God. So, as is often said, that to get rid of the dirty water of bucket, not just the dirty water was thrown away, alongside water, the baby was also thrown away. That's what the tragedy is. The only way out is that we have a polite and academic dialogue in the light of the text, and we let people know that the message of religion in general and the message of the existence of God in particular uh, makes a lot of sense. The last uh, part of my discussion on belief in God has to do with this question. Is belief in God important? I mean, there are some people who say that, okay, I mean, if you feel comfortable with believing in God, it's fine. I mean, it's up to you. But let's not be too worried about it. Let's make our life good, its quality better. Let's deal with fellow humans in a good way. And let it be a personal, private matter of the individual to decide whether he would want to believe in God or not. And the fact of the matter is that this understanding is is not making sense. Um, this understanding uh, would have been okay had belief in God not been a seriously moral issue. That is what the Quran tells us. Um, you know, if being grateful to someone who has been kind to you, who has blessed you with blessings that you enjoy, if it's a moral imperative, it's something that ought to be uh, the response of the individual. And if he's not doing it, he's an immoral person. If it's true, then uh, belief in God is a seriously moral question. And uh, nobody can reject God uh, in, in a way that, there is no concern for the question, for the understanding of the presence of God. What I'm trying to say is that, if you've got to be grateful to your parents, and if you don't be grateful to them, uh, you will be considered to be an immoral person. Your attitude would be considered to be uh, unacceptable. If that's true, then believing in God and thanking Him uh, should be even more important. And not doing it should be considered something extremely immoral. I'll try to explain it with an example that I quite often provide in order to understand what I'm trying to say. By giving the example of a young man who was born and brought up in a family which was well off, wealthy. But while as a teenager, when he was going through education, good education, his wealthy father was kidnapped and he disappeared. Uh, in the meanwhile, the son, because there was a large heritage wealth that he had with him, and the support of the rest of the continued with uh, his education, went for higher education, took over the reins of the business of his father, got married, had children, was in his mid 30s when he was informed that his father was alive. Um, he was kept as a hostage by some people, some terrorists, and he can rescue him, can get in touch with him. Now, this piece of information, to begin with, was not necessarily completely authentic, completely reliable, but there was a hope that this information may actually be true, and if further investigations were undertaken, he could know about the fact whether his father was actually alive or not. But what would be our verdict about uh, the son if, when he comes to learn about this piece of information, this news, says, "Well, I don't care. I'm not interested." I don't think any human being can react that way. But people saying, "We're not interested in God, we don't care," is even worse when it comes to one's attitude towards our Creator. What we are getting in this life is indeed immense blessings of the Almighty. We love this life. We We want to make it even more better than what we have right now. There's so much of passion for living and carrying on our life, our own life as well as that of others. And we don't even want to be seriously interested in finding out that this life was given to us by a creator. If an atheist tells me that he has investigated the possibility of a God being there quite as seriously as the son who lost his father and came to learn about the fact that he was not dead, he was expected to investigate as seriously. If an atheist tells me that he has also investigated quite as seriously, and then come to the conclusion that no, it's not true. Probably he has a moral reason to feel comfortable morally. But the question is, has it been done, or is it that people are so engrossed in their worldly achievements, pleasures, or they're arrogant, they don't want to do it. They have rejected religion and religious people so strongly that they don't even want to look at God, the possibility of the presence of God. Then obviously it's something which really is a morally problematic position.